morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever our listeners are and wherever you are. This is Spiritual Vacancy. I'm Mona Lee, an energy healer and worker and just a lover of life and here to just share information. And here we have, hi
I am
friend.
Brooke Ann. I'm a psychic medium and a Reiki practitioner. And what are we talking about today, Mona?
Ooh, we're talking about numerology today, and this is just sparking an interest in our audience members about what different subject matters are. And when we talked about numerology and numerologically, what number houses that we lived in, we both got so excited to share all the different energies that came along with those numbers. So, as a background, my grandfather was in astrology. So, astrologically speaking, it kind of goes along with the houses of astrology. So, numerologically speaking, in the house numbers, this also has something that's very similar. So, this will be interesting for our listeners to go ahead and look up their house numbers and see what energies that they find with their house numbers. So, how we get the house numbers is just take all of your house numbers. Let's say it's a 7, 1, 2, take them right across the line and just add them up. So 7 plus 7 plus 1 plus 2, what is that? That's a 1, right? 7 plus 1 is 8, plus 2 is 10. So that boils down to a single digit of a 1. So don't you have a 1 house that you were in, Brooke?
Yes, so that was the
Okay.
first house I grew up in. And
Okay.
it was 901, and that adds up to one.
Okay.
And that actually was a house. One is a house of like independence, kind of finding your way, things like that. And I could see that with like my parents living there, but one can also be a lonely house,
Mm.
because think of one as the loneliest number, and it could be a it could be a lonely house of you just kind of focusing on yourself. It's not a house to have like parties or things like that or friends over. It's kind of lonely.
Hmm. Interesting, interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, I could see that. That would be great for a person who is maybe in an apartment or a home that is just kind of just being on their own, right?
Yeah, definitely. Can you hear my dogs
Interesting.
barking?
I hear your dog barking.
Great.
He's speaking and he's just saying hello to the neighbors or the birds or something. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know what she's doing. I'm like, sorry guys. On the podcast.
It happens, it happens.
It does.
So yeah, and the house number that I grew up in was a 3, which numerologically and energetically it was so different because mom would have, you talked about your mom, your parents kind of just, being like a 1. My mom had people over for tea all the time. So they would come over and drink tea. So it was more of a social gathering. So numerologically 3 is a very social number. It's a lot of activity. It's a lot of different groups. She would have something way back in the 70s called Shackley parties, and there were vitamins and minerals, and she would have people having health shakes and making them, different healthy snacks to have. And I used to love those parties and gatherings. So yeah, 3 was a great number. Our house was 408 on
Yeah.
8th Street. So it was a 3 energy, and it was just wonderful on
Yeah.
having togetherness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because if you live in a 3 house, you better be ready for company. You better be ready
That's
for a
right.
good time. I've
That's
never
right.
lived in a 3 house though.
Okay.
My last house was an 8, and
Uh-huh.
8 is brutal. 8, obviously 8 is a very money number, and so is that house. So that house you can have really high lows and really high highs. So usually it's a house of grandeur, if you would call it, or a show house or something like that. And that's how my house was. We custom built that house. And we thought Jeremy's mom might move in with us eventually. So it was like a 5-bedroom house, 2 laundry rooms, 2 master bedrooms, like this huge house. And then it just ended up being me and Jeremy.
Mhm.
And it was too much for us, but it was also too much for us financially because we had that financial high building it. But then we went through COVID in that house to a very, very financial low where we almost, lost the house,
Hmm.
which we ended up selling it, thank goodness, and we didn't lose it. But 8 houses can be really good or really
Mhm.
bad when
I
it comes
see
to
that.
money.
Yes. And numerologically too, 8 is attainment, success, abundance, 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 a lot, big. So I could see how that would be something there's either the goods or the bads of that.
Yeah, it comes and
Yeah.
goes with that house. Yeah.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
then I've lived in a five house and you've lived in a five house as
I
well?
have. Yes, I've lived in a five house. I was never home because five is travel. Numerologically, it's travel, it's go, it's see, it's do. But then I couldn't pay my bills at that time. I had a hard time. I could not keep up with my mortgage. It was always a struggle, but it was always going and doing. But it was busy. It was busy. So how was yours at your five house experience at that time?
Well, that's funny you say that because that house, the five house, we got foreclosed on and we did lose that house when I was in
Oh,
high school.
okay.
And so yeah, you say that, and that's also where my addiction started. And
Mm,
five houses are an addiction house where, and it's not just drugs, y'all. It's like it could be food, it could be shopping. I mean, it could be relationship addictions. There's a lot of addictions there, not just drugs. But that's
mm.
actually where mine started. And that's interesting how you couldn't pay your mortgage in that house, and we lost our house.
Interesting. And that five house, I remember now, I had a shopping addiction. There was a store called Steinmart, and I was in the corporate world, and it was always like, oh, I gotta see what's on sale at Steinmart. But I was always buying something, and my closets were chock full of clothes, and that was an addiction.
Yeah.
So, and
Oh,
then I would have a
definitely.
lot of red wine during that time too.
Right?
10 years
That's an
ago.
addiction. I mean, that's
Yes.
it. That's funny that, and I forgot about Steinmart. I loved
Mm,
that store when they were open, but it is interesting how it can, like the numbers of the house hold certain energies that we don't
yes.
even realize until we look
Yeah.
up, and then you're like, holy shit, that's like exactly how my house was. Like when I
Yeah.
lived there, what was happening
Interesting.
in your life, and as you move and grow, how it changes.
Yes, absolutely. Not to say that every single number is going to be that way, but for the
Oh,
most
correct.
part, it really is quite amazing how it really can be, though, when you see numerologically what the numbers are and what they represent and how the energy of it is held. Because for what we've talked about, it really has held all of those things of what the numbers are showing. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
for me, it's
yeah,
been spot on across the board with
yeah.
all of my addresses of what I was going through, even if it was a transition house or, a house to get ready before, if you're renting, before you buy a house or whatever it might be. Because now I live in a 11 house,
Mhm.
which is a master number, and then that turns into a two, which is
Mm,
all about working on your spiritual self, working
mm,
from home,
mhm,
things like that, like centering about your spiritual intuition and all that things. I'm like, wow, that's crazy because this is the first time I've lived in an 11 home that went down
mm.
to a two. And
Yes,
that's what I do. I do spiritual
interesting.
work out of my house, and it's the
Yes.
master number. So it's to master your craft and what you do in this home. And it's
Yeah.
about if you live in an 11 that goes into a two, it's about working on what you love. So this is where you're going to master, your goals of your career or your job or your life, which is interesting because the man and woman that live here prior to me, she was a vice principal, and
Mhm.
she'd been working on that. Now she's a principal at a school. She's actually
Wow.
got the top where she's a principal,
Yes.
and I'm like, yeah, well, her living here for 8 years was guiding her into what she's meant to be, I guess.
Yes.
It's the same for me. This house has been a huge help for me,
Yes.
guiding me on my journey. So
That is amazing. And also with that master number 11 boiling down to a two, that is resources. Those are your possessions. Those are, even working with other people. And that just
yeah,
shows up as well in that master number 11, which is the two.
yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, you're
Fascinating.
right. I forgot about that
Yeah.
because it is working with others, working with
Yes.
groups, working with
And you are
other
doing
people.
that.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're
That's
right.
incredible. That's incredible. Yeah, when I was shopping around for my business, my one of my last businesses that I opened in my wellness center, I just wanted a meditation center at that time, and it was back in 2017. So I called my numerologist and I said, "Hey, what do you think about this place versus this place?" So she said, "Definitely go with the 108." And that was the address was 108. So that boiled down to a nine. And what that so fit in numerologically because that was all about just service and helping humanity, humanitarianism, philanthropy, meditation center, togetherness, love, all those things were for that nine house. And it made sense for that business because the yoga studio, people gathered for that, and the women's groups and meditation groups. And it just, yeah, it's a perfect number for that business, for that
Yeah,
type of business.
that's so cool.
Mhm.
That
Yes.
is so amazing. I
Yeah.
love that it goes for businesses and home. And
Mhm.
then what's your house number now that you live in?
So that is when I was looking at that, I thought, oh my goodness, it so very much matches because my house number boils down to a 7, which is spirituality. And that's what I do. When I closed my business down, which was a 9, and I moved it into my home to work out of, it has turned into, I rededicated this house to service and spirituality, everything spiritual, which is the retreats and the women's retreats and the spiritual retreats and the shamanistic work. And I have a conglomeration of every type of spirituality. So I've got Buddhas, and I'm not a Buddhist. I've got Jesus, I've got Kuan Yin, I've got Lao Tzu, I've got statues of Mother Mary and the angels and even aliens. So it's like literally a house of spirituality, and I am nothing, but yet it is representing everything. So
Yeah,
it really matches exactly what my life is all about now.
you think? You think?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, really?
The 7 house. So
Go
for our
figure.
listener, go ahead.
I said, go figure. You have a
Yeah.
7 house.
Right, right. I know. Yes, it's amazing. So I hope that this really activates an interest in our listeners to look at, okay, what is my house number? And what
Yeah.
does that mean? And what resources would you suggest, Brooke, that people look up that you had found that was helpful?
So I love Felicia Bender. If you Google Felicia Bender house numerology,
Mm,
she lays it out in a very like easy, understandable way to read. She breaks down the pros and cons for each house number,
okay.
which I love. But you can Google probably just like house numerology and any website that, you kind of connect with or feel like that, fits for you or what it says about you. They're not
Mhm,
really going to vary that much because it just is what it is with the numbers. But I
mhm,
just prefer Felicia Bender's way of the way she writes it out and what it means. And it's always just hit so spot on for me with her reasonings of the house numbers. But I just found out about house numbers probably like 5 or 6 years ago.
mhm,
I didn't even know, but now when I was even looking to buy the house I live, I looked up the number to see if it would
mm,
fit with me because I'm like, I'm never freaking living in an 8.
yeah,
I don't even care how much I like ever
yeah.
want to go back to an 8 or a 5 because those,
Mm.
when I
Oh,
look
yes.
back, those were like the traumatic, houses for me. An 8 for me
Yeah.
is very similar to the 5 house I lived in because we actually
Mhm,
lost that house.
mhm,
We've got foreclosed on, my parents did. So then with the 8, having that come back in and having that memory of it, I never will live in an 8 house for me. I just
mhm,
don't. And the
mhm,
energy of my house now, I love. And people love it too, because they
mhm.
just say they
Yeah.
come in and they feel at home and they
Yeah.
love the space. And
Mhm,
so I would just suggest, you look up your past homes too.
mhm.
And even if it doesn't really fit for you, see who else is living with you at the time, if it might affect somebody else that lives there as well, and not just you.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. And then I'm just going to throw this out there for any of our listeners because we will promote it eventually. But now, as we're talking, I'm like, me and Mona are thinking about doing a spiritual retreat sometime coming up in the future, and it'll be a oceanfront house. But now I'm like, now I got to add up all the numbers on the
Yes,
house, see
we
which one
do.
is going to fit with the retreat. If
Yes,
it's
we
an 8,
do.
be like, nope, not booking that one. Nope, not booking
However, if it is for a spiritual retreat, and that is abundance for people to have abundance in their hearts and people to have
it. True.
abundance in their minds, and just
You're
for that
right.
time frame. Oh, excuse my bump here,
You're fine. You're fine.
but yeah, I'm excited about that. So
You're right.
yes,
Yeah, but
yeah,
I probably will still look into it and be like, what is that one? What
yeah,
house is that? Is that a good feeling?
yes. Yes, exactly, exactly. It
Yeah.
goes along with feng shui as well. So if people think about feng shui, sometimes people look at, like when I was shopping for my land, of where to build my house and where to face the door. And so that might be something interesting to talk about in the future as
Cool.
far as feng shui, but numbers are part of that as well.
Yeah, it's crazy how much
Yes.
numbers are so involved in everything we do.
Yeah, they are. They
Yeah.
are. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for listening today. Go look up your house number and see how it fits. Let us know in the comments. You can find me at Spiritual Medium Broken on Facebook, TikTok, my website, mediumbroken.com. And where can they find you, Mona?
So I am beautifulmindsc.com and my phone number is right there as well. So I also have Facebook and Instagram as well. So looking forward to seeing you all soon.
I know. Y'all have a beautiful day. See you next week.
Namaste.
Namaste.